On now. We do have two after-hours events going on tonight. One is the Whose Slide Is It Anyway competition, which is kind of like a potluck slide karaoke. You can sign up for that up at registration. Then after that, we're going to be having what we're calling drunk debates, which is audience participation debates on very trollish topics. And so that's what we have lined up for after-hours entertainment this evening. Please do go ahead and sign up for that upper registration if you're interested, so make sure you get a seat for that. And that's all I've got. Oh, also, there's like a negative pressure inside of a lot of the rooms I found in the upper levels here. So as you're exiting your room, pull your door shut. On my way down, I saw literally 3 of them just like kind of creaked open. And I noticed mine does that as well if you just try and let it shut on your own. So make sure you pull this door closed or I'm going to take all of your scotch. All right, and that's all I've got. And here's beltface.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Welcome to Seeing Purple, Hybrid Security Teams for the Enterprise. I'm Mark Kikta. In case you didn't know, I've given this talk just a few times. So who in here is a fan of Red versus Blue? Heard of it? Fun time? Yeah, there we go. Okay. Cool. There's going to be a lot of those references, as you can imagine. All right, to start with a little bit about me. I'm a security consultant with BioPoint. We're a security consulting company in Auburn Hills, Michigan. This is me and a couple members of my team, Jimmy Vo and Derek Thomas. I'm also a member of MISEC and LDN. We're kind of just some security groups. If you need to get a hold of me on Twitter, I am beltface. All right, so today we're going to talk about company struggle. I found that the best way to talk about this is in the form of an allegory or story or an example. And this hypothetical company underwent a merger and acquisition back in 2013. There were insider threats everywhere. They came to us, they said, hey, we manage billions of dollars in assets. Most of our money comes from, most of our value derives from these models that we built of the market. If these were to get out into the wild, if these were to leave this company, the merger would fall through. So we started talking, and they wanted to know, what sort of policies should we put in place? What should we do? How are we going to do this? We said, all right, slow down for a sec. Let's back up a second. Let's start with why. Let's ask ourselves why you're in business in the first place. What do we want, or what are we protecting? Simon Sinek has a great talk on this called How Great Leaders Inspire Action. And in his talk, he uses this slide. He calls it the golden circle. In the center, you've got the why, or your motivation. And then from that, you derive your process. And then from that process, you derive your product. Is anyone here familiar with Apple's slogan? Anyone? That's it, right there. Well, yes, pay extra. But no, it's think different. That's why they're in business, to think different. And regardless of your opinion on whether or not they actually do that, I actually do on a Mac, so I'm somewhat biased, but their whole thing is about thinking different. So how do we apply this to our own organizations? Well, we ask ourselves, why is the bad guy going to target us? In this case, it was to exfiltrate specific data. It could be to make money, get intel, or you could just have some script kiddie who found a vulnerability and it's like, hey, I'm doing this for fun. Woohoo! I found AutoPwn. Then you want to ask yourself, why is your client in business? Why are you in business? And obviously it's to make money, but are you providing a service? Are you providing a product? Why are you doing what you do? From there, you can ask the how. Well, how am I going to protect my client? You can use ACLs, start a SIM program. You can do policies. All of these, though, are derivative off of that why. Then you ask yourselves, well, how is the bad guy going to target my company or my client? So they can use exposed services, client-side attacks, social engineering, what have you. Then we move to the what. This is the action part. What are we going to protect? Where are we going to deploy our services? Where are we going to deploy our very expensive Blinky boxes? We got our critical business services. We have our core infrastructure server network, and these aren't in order. You want to start with that core, with that center of what keeps you in business, and then work your way out. And if you notice, I have the DMZ crossed out. there is so much noise in a DMZ that you really don't get actionable intelligence from it. And besides, if someone compromises your DMZ, the whole point of this is to prevent them from actually achieving their objective. But whereas Simon Sinek uses a circle, I like to use a triangle. Because in this, we're building something. We're building a program. And to do that, at the base is the why. And then off the why, we build the how. And then off the how, we get the what. So what I'm saying here is this may not be right for your client. This may not be right for your company exactly as it's being presented. The point here is to do something about it. You stand around all depressed, not doing anything, it's just as bad as completely removing all your security devices from your network. Because we really do have to face the hard truth. You are going to be breached. Your client is going to be breached. J.J. Guy, back in 2001 to the military, gave an excellent brief called The Assumption of Breach. And in there he said, it's only a matter of time until you're breached. Winchwar II in 1999 wrote a book called Time-Based Security that addressed this concept. And this is basically what it is, right? So you've got your protection value as a function of time. So how long is it going to take the attacker to go through your network and achieve his objective? You have your detective value. How long is it going to take you to detect that attack or that compromise? And how long is it going to take you to respond? So if we consider the response time as an extension of the detection time, so if there's no detection, there's no response. If our protection as a function of time is greater than the amount of time it takes us to detect and respond, we can consider ourselves secure. So instead of thinking of everything like an impenetrable fortress, we try and slow them down long enough for us to get through. So let's work on a couple definitions. We've got our blue team. Do we have any blue teamers in here? Sysadmins, network admins, SIM analysts? Okay. I think this is probably my favorite XKCD. It really illustrates the two main things that we want to work at in terms of a blue team. We want to be able to detect the compromise. We want to be able to react to the compromise. And I think the sysadmin in here did a pretty damn good job of detecting and reacting to that compromise. So what do we mean in the real world outside of, comics? Well, we have our log monitoring solutions. That's going to be your primary detection mechanism. Your SIM monitoring, some sort of log collection, network log pulling, net flows, that sort of thing. And then you have your preventative measures. So your vulnerability management programs, your blinky boxes, your IDS, your IPS, and those sort of things. So how many of you are familiar with SIM? I know you are. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, a SIM is a security incident and event monitor. And what that does is it takes all the logs in your system, you point them at this box in it, this blinky box, and it puts them into one giant file. And then what it does is it'll run its correlation engine across them. And it'll try and find certain patterns indicative of compromise. So for example, let's say there were 500 failed logins to a domain controller, but on that 501st try to that same user, there was a successful login. Chances are pretty good that they brute forced a password. And the whole point of these detective measures are to be able to quickly identify within a few hours of a potential exposure that compromise, that evidence. So that way then we can initiate our response measures. And then through this program, what you want to do is you want to keep narrowing that time window down. Keep cutting it down from an hour to 50 minutes, to 45, to 40, to 37. Every little increment that you can bring that down to is a win. So our preventative measures mostly center around a VM program for client 0. It gives us visibility into our system preparedness. What does our vulnerability surface look like across our entire network? It helps with the patching schedule. It helps identify these critical hosts, which ones have our data on them that we need to protect first. Which ones can we go without protecting for a few days or a month or until the next cycle? Then we have a red team. Any red teamers in here? Cool. So I'm assuming most of you are pen testers, right? You know, this is the sexy. Johnny Chris in the back being the shining example of the sexy pen tester. But for the most part, these are done because of audits, right? Audit requirements. You know, did you have a pen test done? Okay, well then that means that you're secure. But there's this whole we break it, you fix it mentality, right? You hand off your report and you say, well, I absolutely destroyed you. Here's how I did it. Haha. I'll see you next year. And I'll exploit the same vulnerability again and again and again. Because the fix has never been tested, or sometimes it's completely ignored. You're exactly correct, yeah. And then you put a blinky box in place and it's all safe. So that's where the security exercises come into play, and this is kind of forms the core of the way the purple team works. Grape Ape is really killing it in there. Yeah. Thank you, Wolf. I appreciate the morale boost. So what we want to do is we want to take a specific stage in the attack, right? Whether it's the persistence stage or the internal recon stage or the initial breach stage. And we want to test it. We want to assume the controls that we have in place to prevent everything or detect everything up to that point have failed. And then we test. Did we detect it? Did we prevent it? What is our readiness like at that particular stage? And exercises are really cool because you don't really need to have the latest elite hacks, right? You can use system administration tools. You can use just general tools to replicate behavior. We don't really want to use and block tools. We want to use and block behavior because that's what's going to keep us safe. So here's the basic breakdown between the two. Both use real techniques. Both use real objectives. But the difference between them is that you're modeling versus executing an attack. With an exercise, you're saying, hey, look, this is what the web traffic would look like. This is what, if somebody were to use, say, black hole exploit kit on the network, this is what it would look like in the net flows. Versus, I'm going to use black hole exploit kit on the network, and did it block it? And then we're testing our specific controls versus our overall posture, right? So we want to see at each stage, can we detect and prevent this? And basically, the age-old motto of trust but verify. In this case, we are verifying that these controls actually work. And then with our assessment, we're verifying our overall posture. Did these work as the attacker was going through? And then the purple team definition. Well, the purple team is kind of like the small child caught in between two giants, right? How many red teamers are like, yeah, I kicked that blue team's ass? Or that blue teamer is like, yeah, I totally stopped that red teamer. You talk and with people and you get this kind of impression of this. And they're constantly butting heads. And we're really on the same team. It's not this concept of red versus blue or blue team's better or red team's better. We all serve the same goal of protecting our organizations from attacks. I think Raf Mudge said it really well. He said this on the B-Sides Detroit 2013 podcast. He said, my idea of hacking is taking the tactics, techniques, and procedures that different threats are using today, and then using them against our organizations when they have a mature program to understand how our controls stand up when exercised by a sophisticated thinking adversary. One of the key points in here is this mature program statement. You can't execute this if an organization is not worried about security. You have to make them want to have security as opposed to just a checkbox. You have to show them with provable metrics how to actually be secure and why it matters to them. So that's what we're going to talk about a little today. So this is the basic concept of purple team. You take the knowledge of your weaknesses, the knowledges of your strengths, and you combine them against your critical infrastructure. And you use that to determine what's most important to you, how you're going to protect it, and what you're going to do about it. Another key point to remember about this is that this isn't just limited to your IT teams, right? the IT department isn't just there to produce technology. They're there to have a service. Their job is to provide a service to the rest of the company. And what matters to that company matters to you, because your job is to protect that company, not just the IT infrastructure. And when you start doing this, when you start going through, you can take your teams from something that like this to your badass purple team stopping the missiles of APT. Now it's time to drink. So here are the main goals that we're looking at. You see I added the different values that this will help. And you see this is, you got your protection and detective values, which is what we're looking for when we're creating our realistic scenarios. We're looking to increase our protective posture and our detective posture. Then as we go down, we increase different levels of that equation of PT greater than DT plus RT. The only one common through all of them, though, is the detective controls. You need to have detective controls, regardless of what your response is like. If you cannot detect an attack, you're done. You're not secure. So this is what it looks like for Client 0. We have our weekly threat modeling exercises. We have our bi-weekly tabletops to go over those threat models. Then we do our exercises monthly to test our response and our detective controls. And then we do our yearly vulnerability assessment for them. But we target it to a specific threat model that they didn't do so well on. And so what you're doing with these threats and these threat models is you're taking it from the top and narrowing it down into a specific targeted scenario that you know that your client needs to protect itself against. So I'm assuming if you've seen Red versus Blue, you guys are all fans of Halo? Halo fans? Yes? Okay. So when you're storming a citadel, when you're storming, one of their bases, you always have the weak guys, the cannon fodder on the outside, and as you get in, it gets progressively more and more dense. And that's what we're doing. We want to spend enough time keeping them out, so that way, by the time they get to the final room, Big Boss has time to come and kick their ass. So a little bit about threat modeling. It requires, this one is really cool. I mean, it forms the core of a decent security program. It requires the least amount of time and effort. You really only need to do one or so weekly. You can do more if you want. But this is what you can use to push that program forward. By using actionable metrics that you can gain from these threat models, you can say, hey, look, if we add X, Y, and Z, or we do A, B, and C, then our protective controls and our detective and reactive controls increase by 45%. That is what a manager wants to hear, not, hey, if we take this awesome new technology and we do blah with it, it's really cool because it's based on this new open source algorithm, and you've lost them. They don't care. They care about metrics and money, which is what their job is. So when you're choosing a model, you've got a bunch to choose from. You've got the Microsoft SDLC lifecycle, or STRIDE. Takes a while. You have Cyber Kill Chains of Doom from Lockheed Martin. Then you've got the attack paths from MISEC. You notice in the beginning I said I'm a member of MISEC, so I'm going to choose the Cyber Kill Chains of Doom.
Good choice.
Thank you. Thank you. I figured I'd rep MISEC. The money? Oh, yeah. Yeah. They like their money. So a little bit about attack paths. This is what a basic attack path looks like. You work your way down to the objective that you want the attacker to achieve in your model. Then you work your way up, plotting out the controls. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into this because the illustrious Wolfgang Gorlich over here is good. Yeah. I heard they make pills for that. So at 6 p.m. tomorrow, Wolfgang's going to be giving a talk called How to Create an Attack Path Threat Model. I highly recommend you go see it. It's worth a talk in and of itself, and it's quite informative. And yes, please send me your money. Or, you know what? From Wolfgang, I will accept a hug. No? So we ran through a threat model on this of the data exfiltration, and this is what we came up with. We found we didn't have too good of a rule for this, so we added a detective control in. So what this basically boils down to is that we're looking for a flow with a flow bias of local, meaning that it's an upload, and if the flow has over 100 megs of data going out. Probably indicative of a data exfiltration event. And it works pretty well, actually. But notice how this is targeting a specific behavior, not a tool. They're not looking at, oh, if someone goes to drive.google.com, alert. No, it's saying if we notice a behavior that resembles a data upload. Yeah. All right. And then we increase our severity if it's access to a known cloud storage. Do we have no? All right. Look, man, it's an addiction. I can't stop. So then we moved on to a tabletop exercise. The first thing on here is that it requires a table, because this is really important. As we found out when we all tried to stand around and crowd around in a small, tiny office, it gets real uncomfortable real quick. Now, this is, once you have your table and your chairs and things like that, I didn't include the chairs because usually tables come with chairs, but you never know. But it is slightly more expensive in terms of time than threat modeling. It requires getting more people around, and as everyone knows, time is money, security's time, fun stuff. But what you do is you take the more likely of the two models, we took the more likely of the two models and we tabletopped it. We found something really interesting. Nobody knew what to do. We said, okay, that alert has gone off, what now? Everybody just kind of was like, yeah, that was actually thrown out. Update your resume, run and hide. I heard the data center is pretty cool right now. That sort of thing. My manager doesn't have access. He can't get me in there. Reformat everything was also thrown out. So, all the things. Reformat the internet. What's that? A degaussing wand? Yes. So it's really important that there be it's really important that there be well-documented incident response procedures. And that's what the tabletop exercises help with. It helps you get down who reports to whom and how do we get that line of communication open in the event of an emergency. Let me move to exercises. They're slightly more expensive in terms of time than tabletops. But what you do is you take these scenarios, right, and you exercise them. You say, well, hey, I'm worried about somebody being able to internally scan after a pen test, or after an initial breach. Is this possible? Or can somebody execute a remote shell? Oh boy. Okay. So it looks like this, someone decided to put me in jail for hacks for kids. Thank you to whoever did that. Hacks for kids. Anyway. Oh, that's a little dark. But anyway. Hey, you know what? Our pen tester has been known to do some. So if you're doing stage 4, you could do something along the lines of netcat or something like that. Let's take a look at the data exfiltration one, right? This is a really cool command for Linux, really simple. And so, thank you. What this will do is this will create a 1.1 gig file of zeros that you can use to upload and test to see, do I actually detect this? Now, it's important to note that since this is a 1.1 gig file of zeros, it does not work with stuff like SCP, SFTP, or anything like that because it actually uses gzip, and it gets really frustrating before you realize that why isn't this working? And then you find out, oh wait, I'm being crazy here. You can catalog file scan if you want, but the point is that this will create a 1.1 gig file in about a second. Then we can move on to our assessments. Now these are incredibly expensive in terms of time and capital, compared to your political capital. So if something goes wrong, you're on the hook. I mean, I don't know if has anyone had anything go wrong during a pen test? Services go down, anything? And have you been on the receiving end of the irritation or ire? Yes. So that's why you want to have these specific targeted scenarios. And it also increases the value out of them. But these can range from 10,000 to 100,000 or whatever, however much you charge, depending on who you hire. But you want to execute your attack along a specific path as opposed to just saying, hey, look, I'm sitting on your network, okay? I've ARP cache poisoned you, you're vulnerable. Well, what did you get? ARP cache poison. What'd you get? And it just goes back and forth, and you turn on static ARP tables, and suddenly they have no idea what to do. That's what you want to avoid. You want to have something more along the lines of, hey, we have financial documents, we have PII, we want this information to be exfiltrated. I want you to see if you can do this. And so you try. So they came to us and they said, all right, for our pen test, we want to have an external access actor trying to exfiltrate data. We're not going to tell you anything about the systems. Well, I mean, I knew, our pen tester didn't. It was actually really awesome to watch him do this. And we want you to try to exfiltrate financial documents and PII out the DLP. I want to see if our DLP will stop. They had OCR, they had awesome stuff. Mr. Christmas? Agreed. The point that he brought up was that you don't want to just limit your pen testers to one specific path. And he's absolutely correct. I actually didn't highlight the last point down here, but it says, if you can't access it along that path, go wild. And just try and exfiltrate that data. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes. The other point that he brought up was that if somebody comes up to you and says, well, hey, we can't do this because we can't sacrifice, we can't expose our production systems, you're already vulnerable. And he's absolutely correct. Going back to that whole time-based security thing, where if you can't test your ability to detect and react, you might as well just remove everything. All right, and so they wanted to see if we could exfiltrate this out the DLP. So what we did is we combined all the objectives together. We drove our little unmarked van up into their parking lot. Not really, we don't really have an unmarked van yet. It's an SUV. It's an extended length SUV that fits 8 people. No free candy over here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, I can't tell you because of OPSEC, but yes. There is free candy. It's actually in the van itself, so you have to take off the side panels and extract it. And if by candy, you mean here. Anyway, so we jumped onto their wireless network. We were able to steal the WPA2 hash. And we cracked that WPA2 hash with a bunch of John the Ripper rules, and it happened to be company name and year. It was super secure, and we were very lucky to have found that. So as we're kind of, scanning around, what's that? That's the joke. So as we're scanning around, we found that the DNS server that DHCP used had a bunch of ports open. It was really weird, and it looked a little bit like a domain controller. In fact, it was a domain controller. They had done a one-to-one NAT to their internal domain controller onto their guest Wi-Fi. Okay. So then we kind of messed around with RPC and RPC client. Let's try a null username. Oh, hey, look, there's a null bind. Oh, hey, look, now we have a list of 900 users. So we tossed that into a Metasploit module that tested username as the password. Out of those 900, we found 5. So we took 1, and we authenticated using RPC client. And we were able to pull down all the domain admins. And as we're scrolling through, we saw something that looked like a system32 exclamation mark or ampersand or you know, the bang or something. And we thought that looked oddly like a password. So we tried it. It was a password. And from there, we were able to take all their financial documents, all their PII, send them over to a print server to print them to a PDF, and exfiltrated them right into the laptop. That was game over. So the point here is that these were all, what's up? They did, but only to external. So because it was internal, it was just, you know, what was a local machine to a local machine. Yep, right through the domain controller onto the laptop. So the point here is that these were all tiny vulnerabilities. I mean, they're not really huge, and it's not like MS-08067 was vulnerable. It's just, they're tiny little things that add up to a huge vulnerability. That's what you want to find from your pen test. What tiny vulnerabilities are in your environment, configuration or otherwise, that all add up to one huge vulnerability. So where do we start? What's that? Minecraft? Absolutely. I don't know where else you would start. No, we do want to start with gathering threat intelligence. You could do it through Minecraft. You know, set up a Minecraft server and just kind of mess around. Or, you know, you could just kind of threat model your environment or something like that. But when you start threat modeling, you can start putting them, as Wolfgang will talk about, into these Excel sheets. And these Excel sheets will generate you metrics. What you do is you go to your boss and you say, well, hey, look, you know, I generated these metrics about our environment. We're this, you know, we're protected across this path. We have 47 or 48% detective controls across. If we had this in, we could get that up to 75, or something along those lines. And the best way to do this, I found, is using Steve Fox's communication plan. Any of you guys know CircleCityCon? Steve Fox did an OSINT workshop this morning. I know you do. So Steve Fox is a brilliant guy. He's got this whole communication plan. I highly recommend hitting him up on Twitter, email, or wherever, and asking him about this. And he's more than happy to share. He's a great guy. I'm going to cover it in a tiny little bit. This can't even come close to how he explains it, but I think it'll give you a good starting place. These are the 5 things that he said that you want to look for in a good story or a good communication with your boss. You don't want it to be something that the company doesn't need. You don't want it to be like every other thing that they have heard from every employee that's come through. That we need a blinky box, we need a blinky box, we need a blinky box. That's not what they want to hear. You need to be credible, right? You can't be, you know, a junior employee that was just hired in trying to get buy-off from a director level. That's not going to work. You have to be able to show the benefits. You don't want to just say, well, we're going to put this in. What's it going to do? Well, it's going to give us security. That means absolutely nothing, especially to a higher up that just hears security and then blanks out and just sees it as a cost center that doesn't provide them any additional value. You have to make them see that value. You have to show them how it's aligned with your strategy. So down here, you'll see there's a link to Imgur. I unshortened it because nobody would actually go to the bit.ly link. But what that is that's... What? Oh, okay.
Speaking of that, this is going out.
Oh, okay, no problem. I don't know how I'm going to do standing still, but let's do this. All right.
Sorry, man.
So the Imgur links are to Pixar's 22 criteria for creating a compelling story. Really, really in-depth, really cool, and there are pictures of Disney movies. It's great. Yeah. Disney owns Pixar now. And Marvel and Star Wars. So I'm assuming that means that Princess Leia is a, Disney princess with a coke nail? I don't know. Anyway, so when talking to Steve, this is what he says are the 4 main criteria for creating the proper position to present an argument. You want to have the appropriate power, again, going back to that whole thing of not being a junior employee trying to convince a director level. Bring that up because I tried to do that as a junior employee with Secure 24. It did not work. Your timing has to be right. You can't be going up to them saying, hey, I want you to spend $250,000 on this stuff right after your company had a horrible quarter. You need to be able to show the benefits. If the only thing that you can tell that director level is that it provides security, you're not doing it right. And lastly, you have to have the correct audience coverage. You need to have all the decision makers in the room so that way you're not retelling the story 3 and 4 times. And the more people you have hear it in different times, the easier it is for that message to get lost. I'm sure you guys remember the game Telephone you played in like 2nd grade, 3rd grade, whatever. Perfect example. So again, this may not be exactly what's right for you, but the point is that find what is right for you, find that why, and do something. You really can't be sitting around saying, well, I'm secure. Well, how do you know? Because I set these in place. You have to be proactive with your security. And when you are, you cease to become a red and a blue team. And instead, you're all one big happy family hugging it out over the latest grunt kills. So, I think Johnny Christmas had a question. Right. Agreed. So, yep. The point that he brought up was that if you don't have the power, if you do find yourself as that junior employee, that you need to align yourself with the people that do have that power. And one of the things that you want to look at when you're going into a company is, well, what's the security culture like there? So that's an absolutely excellent point. Thank you. Mhm. That's an excellent point. I absolutely agree. He was saying from a sysadmin's point of view that he absolutely needs to know how the red team works, and from the red team's point of view, you absolutely need to know how the blue team works in order to be efficient at your jobs. And I 100% agree. Yep, that is exactly what purple team is. Thank you. Yes, I saw his hand first, then grab you.
How do you handle the conversation about this system, you can't let it go down, you can never let it go, it can never crash? How do you handle that? That's a failure.
That's a single point of failure. Yep. That's something that you need to address with the management. Again, a lot of it has to do with communicating your message correctly. Know what your message is, know what your brand is in that company, and then know how they're going to receive it, so that way you can approach it in that method. Steve Fox, again, is a great resource for that. Agreed. And you were saying? Oh, the exercise slide? Absolutely. This one?
So on the exercise slide, and to the point of reducing the risk of taking systems down, I know you had some interesting experience about crafting exercises that are seen as low risk by the sysadmin. How do you do that?
Correct. Thank you. So last year, I gave a talk, a Linux talk on Linux that basically walked through creating a remote access toolkit with system administration tools. If you can go to a sysadmin and say, hey, I want to try and execute this on a server, they can look at it and say, well, hey, each one of these is a bash command that I understand. And their initial response may be to say yes, or at least it's not going to be an immediate no. As opposed to you give them a compiled binary and you say, hey, I want to run this, and they have no idea what's going on. As a former sysadmin, I would tell you to go pound sand. I mean, that's just not going to happen. But if you show them something that just uses sysadmin tools, that just uses things that they know and that can just replicate the behavior and still achieve what you want, you can get that passed through more quickly, as opposed to setting up an entire network to just run a single, potentially backdoored binary on. And the question was, how do you set up something like that? Master Christmas.
So how do people in this room who are here in order to take information from that to their company go from taking your talk, which is your opinion on the matter,
Mm-hmm.
and use the information you gather here in order to start changing the culture in our companies to be more appropriate for building a real purpose?
So the question was, how do we take my talk, which is absolutely my opinion, and give measurable results to the company that you go back to? And I think that, oops, let me go forward a bit. The best place to start is to start asking yourself why, and start generating threat intelligence about your network. I would highly recommend, again, seeing Wolfgang's talk on threat modeling. You have downtime. If you have downtime as a security professional, spend some time. Well, yeah, doesn't everybody just sit around all day and watch the blinkies? Yeah. Yeah. But definitely start at least gather some threat intelligence. Try and figure out what's going on with your network. Do some research, and then start doing threat models at the very least. Start trying to improve your detective measures, the detective measures of your network. That, I think, would be the best place to start if you want to increase the security of your company. Yes?
So what made you get so interested in becoming stronger?
So the question was, what made me interested in getting stronger in the purple team? Purple is indeed my favorite color. I actually don't really have a favorite color. I think assigning an emotion to a color doesn't make sense, but that's just me. That's why I like wearing black on black on black on black. I know most hackers don't like black, though, so I feel a little odd there. But no, what really got me started in this was the fact that we were seeing a lot of antivirus failing. We were seeing a lot of IDS failing because they were looking for a specific hash value of a toolkit or something very specific, as opposed to looking at the broader picture. as well as I needed to make a talk for B-Sides Jackson. Any other questions? Radis. That's an excellent question. The question was, if I found myself in the same position again at Secure 24, how would I approach it this time? What I probably would have done is I would have approached my team and I would have said, hey, look, we've got this issue, we have this concept. I would have started by going through and looking at the issues that we're facing, so gathering threat intelligence. And then on my own time, if I had the time and I was really interested in pushing this forward, I would have started generating these threat models. And from there, I would have approached my team, I would have approached my team lead, and I would have said, hey, look, we have this information. If we do this, this, and this, which will cost this much, we can increase our security posture by X%. And in doing so, then he can take it to the manager, because the team lead at Secure 24 is basically your point of contact. He's just another engineer, with everyone, but he's the point of contact with the manager. So he's usually considered the senior most individual. And then that person has the clout and the power to go to the manager, and then they can get on the same page, and then they can approach the director together. So when you have two people with the same power, so you have the liaison basically between the team and the management, and then the manager and that liaison going together and saying, hey, this is something that we should do, there's a lot more weight behind that than one junior employee saying, hey guys, we should really do this because it's cool and it'll give us more security. So, any other questions? Jeremy. Too soon, bro. Too soon. I'm not even going to repeat that one. I'm going to... any other questions? Yes, you in the corner. That's awesome. What the gentleman was saying in the, oops, maybe I should just leave this here. What the gentleman was saying in the corner was that what his company does is that they mentor junior employees, junior analysts and those types of people in how to give briefs and how to talk to management and how to give intelligence in a business mindset. I think that's excellent. Communication is one of the things in this industry that we're lacking. I absolutely agree, especially to the business professionals that are in our companies. And yeah, 100%. Again, I'd like to pimp out Steve Fox for this. He's an excellent resource on this matter. One more question, the guy in the back. The comment was that in Sunday morning there's going to be a talk and a workshop on talking to the media and talking to management. I'm going to be there, and Wolf's going to be there. It'll be really cool. I'm out of time, but if you have any more questions, feel free to hit me up as I'm walking out. Thanks, guys.